Hello, I'm Debbie Bell-Hosking for FinextraTV here at Sibos 2023 in Toronto, and I'm chatting to Kelly Mathieson of Digital Asset and Hanna Zubko of IntellectEU. And of course, we were chatting before the cameras turned on, and you both are regulars at Sibos. Can I ask you first, Hanna, how many Siboses have you attended?
Well, it's been 13 years that I've been coming to Sibos.
13.
So Amsterdam 2010 was my very, very first Sibos.
Wow, I just find this, we've got great talent here on the sofa and years of Sibos, and I think, Kelly, you actually beat Hanna.
I do by a bit. I'm going to preface it by saying that I started when I was 12, but I have done over 20 at this point, which has been absolutely phenomenal way to get information on the industry and understand the themes. So I am a proud veteran of 20 plus Siboses.
Right, well, you said that word veteran. As a veteran of Sibos, you must have seen so much change.
Indeed, yes. It's interesting. When we talked about this leading up to it, in my head I both think there are many of the same stories over and over again, but just being played out in new market conditions with new types of market participants acting in different ways. So what I find to be really different and invigorating about this particular Sibos is we're seeing much more discussion around digitization, which really is just the creation of a new form of asset. We saw this with derivatives, we saw it with structured funds. Before that, now we're seeing it come in a different form of digital and tokenized assets. And with that is also coming a heightened level of discussion around interoperability. This is actually where Hanna's organization spends a good bit of time enabling that. But for those market participants to play in new roles in new ways with each other, using this technology to create new solutions using those new assets.
I mean, the wealth of change that you've seen, and let's bring ourselves back to this Sibos 2023. And Hanna, this is directed at you. What are these top fintech trends you're seeing at the moment?
Well, for me, it's really delightful to see that we are really at the inflection point where very serious organizations here on the floor, many of them have booth here, have been already not only utilizing DLT emerging technology in their operations, but they've been in production for a year. They have processed, $1 trillion months, like in case of Broadridge on their repo platform, or in case of Aculand, for instance, they already saving 100 million for the industry, right, with their one source platform, with D7 on Clearstream and Deutsche Börse Group. We see the accelerated issuance, and they've also been in production for a year. We've hosted fireside chat yesterday. Here it's been standing room only. So people do see the interest of learning from this top leaders that are paving the way. And what's really interesting also that we see that while we have long past that stage of are we doing another POC? No, we're in production for over a year. The other aspect is it's much more about interoperability now. How do we utilize new business models and create more mutualized workflows between all those distinct applications and ecosystems? And that's where I see also, for instance, good use for solutions like demo finance that we utilize in some of our day-to-day work as well, specifically like libraries that allow to accelerate that time to market, time to production, because now it's we do not want to waste any time. We moved on and we want to get to market, right? And we want to bring more products to market because all of our customers can benefit faster from our digital transformation.
That's why if I could add, that's why your question and the way you've asked it is precisely right. When you think about the organizations that are here, coming from the technology side, it's wonderful to be able to talk about our technology, smart contracts, distributed ledger technology. What's different at this Sibos is you now are hearing about those solutions, but you're hearing about them in the new revenue that's being created, the degree to which applications are connecting to reach new clients, to tackle regulatory requirements in a lower cost, higher value sort of way. So to be fair, as a technologist, you want to be able to talk about the technology, but what's really invigorating is that now it is more talking about what you get as a result of the solution. And that's probably the biggest change I've noticed over the last few years.
So let's talk a bit more about that, a result of what you get because of the solution and the new technologies that you are discussing. And of course, this will not be your last Sibos either, so there's that look ahead as well. So what opportunities are you seeing now? With everything that's bubbling and happening, what are the opportunities that are presenting themselves?
Yeah, so there's plenty, right? And just like we went from analog to digital in media and TV, like the same happens to financial services. And so the opportunity to accelerate and opportunity to utilize capital differently just opens all new breadth of utilization business models. And we see, for instance, in the repo market that in the over time, like you had to in the past to only go overnight, and now you can do it with 3-hour windows. So that creates new opportunities for borrowers, for lenders to utilize their capital differently. And overall, we can look at just variety of use cases, and step by step we realize that Kelly, you feel free to add, but just absolutely fascinating amount of business models emerging.
Yeah, I think what's sort of underneath what Hanna is saying, or just to reinforce one of her points, is a level of interconnectedness that I don't think has previously existed. For sure, there have been market participants in the past that have made joint ventures together, formed consortiums together, and for sure there have been instances where new organizations have been formed using technology. But what we're seeing now is the ability for that to come together and create what I might refer to as sort of these compound solutions. What's different is that now the market participants, some of which are competitors, some of which are aggressive competitors with each other, can come together, but they don't have to compromise the privacy of their own data. It's not that I have to give you all of my data for you to create a consortium that we work in. We can each maintain our own data, our own approach to using that data and onboarding clients and interacting with them, our own approach to having a competitive stance. And the technology enables that mutualization of workflow, the benefits that Hanna's talking about from cost and time and risk. But for market participants, our underlying beneficial owners, the pension plans, trusts, endowments, foundations of the world that are holding all of the assets that we're talking about, they get the benefit of compound solutions across the best and the brightest in the industry who are bringing their applications into the network. In our case, it's the Canton network that is enabling this ability for applications to be out there, much like websites were in the beginning of the internet, but for applications to be there, to be discoverable and to be connected in a way that creates a very unique solution for each type of market participant, and frankly enables even more innovation in the form of a competitive edge.
And isn't that interesting? Because I haven't been to as many Sibos as both of you, but certainly when I did start coming to Sibos with FinextraTV, there used to be, in those days, say a few years back, collaboration actually was a buzzword.
Yeah.
But
now it's real.
But now it's real, and all these discussions that have been taking place over the years, we're almost at a tipping point where things are turning into action.
Because I think it's collaboration without compromise. I think in the past, and I have the pleasure of being in the capital markets and security services for decades. I'm not going to say how many, but decades. And I think in the past, what was a challenge was needing to be able to pick which among us would have all of the data, all of the rights and obligations on behalf of all of us. And if that was a competitor, the idea would have been great, but the dialogue was going to cease at that moment. So now you can get to a form of collaboration, but it's without compromise. And not to use another C word, it keeps compounding that growth on behalf of the market participants. That's what we mean when we say interoperability. It is the way to use distributed ledgers in a public way to reach new investors, reach broader markets of market participant types in a way that's more accessible to them online or in a digital-only arena, but to be able to do that in a way that allows each of us to have our own standards for privacy, scalability, and interoperability. And I think you're quite right to say that that's the thematic difference over the course of the last few years. And you're
appreciate those
in the middle of
points.
this, right?
Yeah, I appreciate those points. And like something that we're also seeing happening in the market over time is that many of the organizations, like in this type of cooperative ways, they just say, okay, we don't want to compete on the level of infrastructure. It's just plumbing that needs to be universal. I mean, there's no need to have multiple, subways, right, competing and having tunnels next to each other. We can just utilize the same plumbing, the same kind of tunnels, but then create different value adds for our customers. And we see, and securities lending is no exception, but there's like across the industry, like also KYC, multiple applications where the conversation is much more like, oh, we are adding value in this ad, on this end of the market. Can you actually, like from a life cycle of, digital asset, like add value here, and we are going to add value there. So it's really becomes much more about reusing each other's strengths and applications, and now, integration
and
comes
it's the underlying
play,
beneficial
right?
owners that are going to gain, right? It just is. I mean, yes, these organizations are doing well by saving days and time and cost and effort that your organization is enabling them to do, but ultimately it's the clients of our clients that are benefiting in the form of more creative product.
So great, again, this is your experience coming to the fore over the years. So let's chat now about collateral mobility.
Yeah.
And how do system integrators make that happen? But also, what is collateral mobility?
It's so funny, whenever anyone talks about collateral mobility, what I'm thinking in my head is you make collateral more mobile by immobilizing it, which is such a strange statement to make. But what I mean by that is so many of the transactions that Hanna or that we have been talking about are collateralized transactions, or transactions of some form that require security, because they're multiple leg, like a repo or a securities lending transaction, or it's the derivatives market where you need to have some assurance on a daily basis in the form of margin, right? So much of the more complex security types that are being created now have some form of collateral or security against it. But the challenge is, sort of the dirty little secret up until now, is that those assets, those new transaction types could be created, but the collateral management activity was sort of still a bit in the past and not able to move as fluidly across the transactions or around the globe or across time zones and settlement cutoff times in a way that allows those new transaction types to be done at scale. So collateral mobility is the opportunity to have a wider inventory of assets available for use as collateral by locking them at source, leaving them with the custodians around the world, the CSDs around the world, and not requiring a market movement in order to be used in a transaction. So I no longer will have to deliver out US Treasuries tonight to meet an obligation that I might have, or I think I could have, in Japan tomorrow. I can use the new forms of digital technology to lock it at location in the US during the Japanese trading day. And so there are just a whole host of new forms of transactions that previously would have been impossible or impractical to do because you could not get them secured in time. And collateral mobility, by ironically immobilizing collateral at its location, opens the inventory to be able to do that. And you're working with some of these organizations to bring that technology into production, as you actually where you started the dialogue. So is that, are you finding that to be playing out in practice?
Yeah, absolutely. And where I see a lot of pickup, like we've started with DLT to back office integration back in 2016, and there was always conversation around interoperability, but now it's very, very practical because, okay, we have a timeline of like 6 months. We have, I'm just retelling the client conversation, but essentially within the next 6 months, we need to go in production, or we are already in production, we need to onboard these new participants, and then we really start to face like, okay, they're not going to drop all of their legacy systems, right? It's a new system with a new business model and a new operational model that requires changes in the back office. And that's where we come in, and essentially like either with our catalyst or just with whatever our clients have in their back office from integration standpoints, we're looking of how do we connect to the zoo of applications very often in their legacy. And that's where the challenge quite often lies, and where we help our customers and partners to accelerate adoption, right? Because they very often found the business value, they build an application, but then they realize, oh, to move all their counterparties, we really need to have a playbook ready to onboard all of their applications, start talking to the application in place that will add the value in
and in this case bring more collateral into availability to make it more accessible, and that's just a practical way of it applying.
Well, thank you. I mean, we need more time, don't we?
We really do. So we'll have to make a placeholder for this time next year.
Absolutely. But wonderful to have you, Kelly and Hanna, on the sofa, and also just to hear not only about the current trends and what's happening now, but all the experience that you bring to the table. So thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.